Have you ever felt completely exhausted at the end of the day, even though you didn't do anything physically demanding? You weren't lifting bricks. You weren't running marathons. And yet, your energy feels drained, your patience is gone, and your peace of mind nowhere to be found. We often assume it's because we're working too much, not sleeping enough, or carrying the weight of past regrets. And yes, those things matter. But there's something else, far more subtle, that quietly chips away at our emotional energy day after day. It's not always your past. It's not even your workload. It's who you let near your mind. Most people don't realize this, but your energy is not just affected by what you do. It's deeply shaped by who you allow into your mental space. Some people give you strength. Others, knowingly or not, take it from you. Some elevate your thinking. Others cloud it with their chaos. This is the emotional tax we don't even know we're paying. And the most dangerous part? It's invisible. It doesn't come with alarms or warning signs. It creeps in slowly, through conversations that leave you doubting yourself, through relationships that guilt you into shrinking, through people who unload their negativity onto you like it's your job to carry it. Let me ask you something. Who gets access to your mind on a daily basis? Because access is everything. Your energy, your focus, your peace, all of it depends on your ability to manage that access. There's a line by the ancient philosopher Epicurus that goes like this: associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. Simple, profound, and still 100% relevant. In other words, surround yourself with people who help you become your best self, not the loudest, not the most entertaining, the ones who remind you of who you truly are when you forget. But here's the truth. That kind of intentional living takes courage. Because sometimes the people draining you are the ones closest to you. A friend you've known for years. A co-worker who overshares their drama. Even a family member who constantly oversteps your emotional boundaries. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes your compass. The Stoics taught us not to hate these people, not to blame them, not to lash out. Instead, they taught us to set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You see, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic thinker, once reminded himself, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That's the Stoic response to emotional drain. Not rage, not resentment, clarity, choice, inner strength. You don't owe everyone unlimited access to your thoughts and time. Not everyone deserves a seat at your inner table. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. Think about it. If you left your front door open 24/7, anyone could walk in. So why do we leave our mental door open to people who deplete us? The modern world teaches us to be endlessly available. Always listening. Always answering. Always absorbing. But the Stoic path asks a different question. What would your life look like if you protected your peace the same way you protect your phone password? That's the shift we need. Not a harder heart, but a wiser gatekeeper. So today, I want to invite you to reflect, not just on what's draining your energy, but on who, and more importantly, why they still have access to you. Because protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's sacred. And until you take ownership of who's influencing your mind, you'll always feel at the mercy of other people's moods, chaos, or expectations. The truth is, you can't control who shows up in your life. But you can control who stays, and how close they get to your mind. This channel is not about isolating yourself or becoming cold. It's about awakening to your power. The power to say, I choose what enters my mind. It starts with awareness. And it grows with boundaries, So if you're tired of feeling emotionally drained, this may be your wake-up call. Not to run from the world, but to lead yourself more powerfully within it. This isn't about cutting people off with bitterness. It's about showing up in your life with clarity, peace, and strength. And that begins with honoring your energy as something sacred. Because once you do, your mind becomes a temple, not a public park. And your life, it starts to rise. Part 1. The Chronic Complainer. Let's talk about someone you've probably met. Maybe even today. They always have something to complain about. Their job is unfair. Their relationships are draining. Their health is declining. The world is broken. And at first, you sympathize, you listen, you nod. You try to be a good friend, because we've all had tough days, and venting is part of being human, right? But here's where it shifts. They don't just vent occasionally. They live there. Negativity isn't a moment. It's their identity. They reject solutions. They don't want help. They just want an audience for their suffering. And after just a few minutes around them, you start to feel it. Your mood dips, your chest tightens, your mind feels heavier. Their hopelessness has leaked into your spirit, and suddenly, you're carrying a burden that was never yours to begin with. Sound familiar? This is the chronic complainer. And they're more dangerous than we think, because their words don't just bounce off you. They infect your inner world, slowly replacing your sense of possibility with powerlessness. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Constant exposure to negativity, even when it's disguised as casual conversation, trains your brain to expect the worst. It narrows your vision. It lowers your emotional immune system. It convinces you that things are hopeless, even when they're not. And the worst part, they often don't even mean harm. But intention doesn't erase impact. Now here's what the Stoics taught us. Marcus Aurelius, writing over 1800 years ago, began his meditations with a warning to himself. Be prepared to meet people who are selfish, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial. He wasn't being cynical. He was being realistic. He knew, if you walk into the day expecting perfection from others, you'll always be disappointed. But if you enter with a calm, prepared mind, expecting the imperfect, you become unshakable. That's the first step to dealing with a chronic complainer. Accept that they exist. Don't waste energy wishing they were different. That's resistance. Instead, shift your energy into how you respond. And the Stoic response? It's not to argue. It's not to fix them. It's not even to agree just to keep the peace. The Stoic response is strategic silence. You don't have to feed every fire. You don't have to validate every complaint. You don't even have to reply with sympathy when someone is clearly addicted to their own misery. Sometimes, the most powerful move is a pause. Try this. Next time someone starts spiraling into their usual complaints, don't nod along. Instead, ask them one simple question. What are you planning to do about it? Not in a rude way. Not with judgment, but with calm curiosity. That one question cuts through the fog. Because most chronic complainers aren't looking for solutions. They're looking for emotional co-signers. They want your energy to keep their narrative alive. When you shift the conversation toward action, two things happen. One, they either redirect their focus and start thinking more clearly. Two, or they retreat because your energy no longer feeds their cycle. Either way, you just protected your peace. Now let's be clear. This doesn't mean we stop caring about others. Stoicism doesn't teach us to be cold or indifferent. It teaches us to care wisely, to draw a line between compassion and codependence. There's a big difference between being a safe space for someone in pain and becoming an emotional dumping ground for someone who refuses to grow. You are not responsible for fixing people who don't want to change. Your job is to manage your own mind, your own energy, your own path. If someone in your life is always negative, always resistant to growth, always pulling you into their spiral, it's time to make a shift. That might mean shortening the conversation. It might mean changing the subject. It might even mean distancing yourself altogether. Because here's the hard truth. Your mental clarity is too valuable to be sacrificed on the altar of someone else's emotional chaos. Remember this. You can be kind and still protect your energy. You can be loving and still set limits. You can listen without absorbing. The Stoics believed that the mind is a fortress, and your thoughts are its guardians. So the next time a chronic complainer tries to bring the storm to your door, don't open it out of guilt. Don't let their worldview become your reality. Instead, be like the still mountain. Calm, present, but unmoved. That is power. That is peace. That is Stoic. Part 2. The excuse maker. Let's talk about a different kind of energy drainer. Someone who doesn't seem harmful at all because they sound reasonable. They're not loud. They're not aggressive. They're not complaining nonstop. No, they're subtle, and that's exactly what makes them dangerous. They are the excuse maker. You know the type. They always have a reason for not doing something. A rational, well-worded, confident-sounding reason. Why they didn't start, why they didn't finish, why they didn't follow through. And at first, you might even agree. You might nod your head and think, yeah, that actually makes sense. But over time, you start noticing a pattern. It's never the right time. There's always something in the way, and somehow, it's never their fault. Now here's where it gets tricky. They're not just excusing their own inaction. They start making your discipline look extreme. You want to wake up early? Come on, don't burn yourself out. You want to save money. You can't take it with you when you die. You want to hit the gym after work? You deserve to relax. Slowly, without even realizing it, your momentum gets diluted. Your standards begin to slide. Not because you've changed your values, but because you've been swimming in a pool of comfortable mediocrity. And that's what the excuse maker normalizes. Comfort over courage. Delay over discipline. Rationalization over results. Seneca, one of the great Stoic minds, wrote this more than 2,000 years ago. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He was right. We don't lose our potential through failure. We lose it through excuses that feel valid in the moment, but rob us of momentum over time. Think about that. It's not the big disasters that derail most people. It's the small delays. The "I'll do it tomorrow," the "I'm too tired today," the "now's just not the right time." And here's the kicker. When you're around excuse makers long enough, they start reshaping your inner dialogue. You begin to echo their thoughts in your own head. You start talking yourself out of the uncomfortable things that lead to growth. You stop reaching, you settle, and maybe you don't even notice it at first. But one day, you wake up and wonder why your life feels stagnant, even though you've been busy. That's the mark of someone who has been surrounded by people who praise good enough. So what do? The Stoic solution isn't to attack these people. It's to become deeply aware of how your environment shapes your mind. The Stoics believed that the key to self-mastery wasn't in controlling the world, but in controlling your choices within it. And when it comes to excuse makers, you have three powerful choices. 1. Lead by example. Don't try to argue. Don't try to convince. Live your values loudly. Let your consistency become the mirror that challenges their comfort. Not with judgment, but with silent excellence. You show up at 6 a.m. They'll notice. You finish what you start. They'll watch. You chase what matters despite discomfort. That's leadership. You don't have to say a word. Just do what they won't and keep doing it. 2. Upgrade your inner dialogue. Your greatest defense against external excuses is an internal dialogue that demands more from you. Catch yourself when you begin to echo their patterns. Replace "I'll do it later" with "I start now." Replace "I don't feel ready" with "I'll grow by doing." Replace "I deserve rest" with "I earn rest." Because how you speak to yourself when no one's watching will determine how far you go when everyone else quits. 3. Protect your environment. Let's be brutally honest here. You can't grow in soil that doesn't support your roots. If you constantly surround yourself with people who normalize excuses, laziness, or passive living, you're going to absorb that energy, even if you're disciplined. The Stoics believed in choosing your influences with care, not out of elitism, but out of respect for your mind, your goals, your time on earth. You don't have to cut people off harshly, but you do have to get serious about who gets to speak into your life regularly, because life is short. And the more you tolerate excuse culture, the more you delay your own evolution. So if you're surrounded by people who glorify procrastination, who make growth sound like martyrdom, or who frame your ambition as arrogance, it's time to shift. Not for them, for you, because the truth is, you are here to become something greater, and that requires clarity. It requires strength. It requires rising above the noise of comfortable excuses, no matter how well they're phrased. So the next time someone offers you a soft, rational reason to stay the same, smile. Say nothing, and take another step forward. That is Stoic. That is uncommon. That is how you rise. Part 3. The Gossiper. Let me ask you something. How many times have you been pulled into a conversation that had nothing to do with your life, but left you feeling uneasy afterward? Someone casually mentions what so-and-so did, who broke up with who got fired, who's been acting weird lately. At first it feels harmless, almost entertaining. But by the end of the conversation, something's off. You feel drained, distracted, and a little more disconnected from yourself. That's the quiet poison of gossip. It seems small, but it eats away at our time, our focus, and our integrity. And the truth is, gossip doesn't just waste time. It shapes the way we think. The more we talk about people behind their backs, the more we judge ourselves when no one's around. The more we compare our lives to others, the more we lose track of what truly matters. Gossip isn't just a conversation issue, it's a mindset issue. It trains your attention to drift outward instead of inward. It replaces reflection with judgment, growth with comparison, presence with speculation. And here's what's even more dangerous. Gossip may look like connection, but it's actually the opposite. It's a shortcut for insecure bonding. It tells you, hey, let's build closeness by tearing someone else down. But any trust built on gossip is an illusion, because if they'll speak about someone else to you, they'll speak about you to someone else. The ancient philosopher Socrates said it best. Strong minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Weak minds discuss people. It's not a moral insult. It's a mirror. When your conversations are filled with who said what, who did what, who looks how, You're giving your energy to things completely outside your control. And Stoicism teaches us one thing above all: waste no energy on what you cannot control. Because every second you spend focused on other people's flaws is a second stolen from your own development. Here's the thing. When you listen to gossip regularly, you begin to see people not as humans, but as characters in someone else's drama. It becomes harder to connect genuinely, harder to trust, harder to grow. Because your mind is cluttered with things that don't belong to you. Now, let's be real. We all slip into gossip sometimes. It's natural. It's tempting. It makes us feel like we know more. But wisdom doesn't live in knowing more about other people. It lives in knowing more about yourself. So, what do we do? The Stoic path doesn't demand that we confront or judge others. It asks us to hold the line within ourselves. When someone starts gossiping around you, you don't have to play along. You don't need to act outraged. You don't need to argue. You need 3 tools. 1, don't engage. When the conversation turns toward drama, simply don't contribute. You don't have to say anything negative. You don't have to agree. Let your silence speak your standards. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is quiet non-participation. 2, redirect the energy. If someone starts gossiping, gently change the direction. Try asking, how's your own journey been lately? What have you been working on these days? Most gossip stems from emotional boredom or insecurity. When you redirect the conversation, you give people a chance to show their depth instead of their distractions. 3, refocus on what you can control. If you ever find yourself tempted to gossip, pause and ask, why am I focused on this? Is it avoiding something in your own life? Is it seeking validation? Is it a form of insecurity looking for company? Bring it back inward. Because the truth is, other people's lives will always be noisy. Your peace depends on where you direct your attention. Gossip is a thief. It steals your clarity, your time, your emotional energy. But more than that, it steals your alignment with who you want to become. Every time you resist the urge to judge, to speculate, to comment on things that aren't your business, you grow. You become more focused, more rooted, more sovereign over your inner world. And that's the goal of Stoic living. Not to appear wise, but to actually be wise. To walk through life, clear-minded, undistracted, untangled from the noise of the world. So the next time someone leans in and says, "Did you hear about so-and-so?" You smile. You take a breath, and you shift the conversation towards something that actually matters. That's not boring. That's powerful, because a distracted mind cannot be a disciplined mind, and a judgmental tongue will never create a peaceful soul. Let the world talk you. You rise above it. Part 4. The envious. There's a strange moment in life, one that often catches us off guard. You work hard. You overcome something. You finally hit a goal, and naturally you want to share it with people you care about. Not to boast, not to show off, but to say, "Look, I made it through." And then something unexpected happens. The room goes quiet. The smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. The energy shifts. It's subtle, but unmistakable. Instead of celebrating with you, they downplay it. They say things like, "Must be nice," or "You're lucky," or they hit you with the classic, "Don't forget where you came from." They mask it as concern, or humor, or even support. But deep down, you can feel it. They're threatened by your growth. This is the envious, and navigating their energy is one of the quietest emotional challenges you'll face. Because they're not always loud, they're not always openly hostile. Sometimes they're the people you least expect. A friend, a sibling, a co-worker, even a partner. And that's what makes it painful. You wanted them to rise with you. You hoped your growth would inspire them. But instead, they respond with resistance. Here's what's really happening. Your evolution confronts their stagnation. Your progress reminds them of their procrastination. And instead of doing the inner work, they project discomfort onto you. Now, Stoicism has never been about resenting others. It's not about arrogance or superiority. It's about protecting your peace and understanding human nature. The Stoics taught us not to take envy personally, but to recognize it as a reflection of someone else's inner conflict. Because envy is rarely about you. It's about what you represent. You represent what's possible. You represent discipline. You represent change. And for someone who feels stuck, that can feel like a threat. Seneca wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." In other words, envy often stems from a distorted view of success. People don't see the 5 a.m. alarms. They don't see the quiet sacrifices. They don't see the nights you doubted yourself but kept going anyway. They just see the highlight and feel left behind. So what do you do? How do you handle people who can't celebrate your wins, who secretly resent your progress, or who subtly guilt-trip you for leveling up? The Stoic solution: detach from their expectations. You are not responsible for how someone else receives your light. You're responsible for shining it with integrity. And when you notice someone consistently reacting to your growth with sarcasm, guilt, or dismissal, protect your victories. You don't have to dim your light, but you can choose where you shine it. Growth deserves safe spaces. It deserves to be celebrated, not critiqued. So be mindful of who you share your milestones with. Not everyone is ready to applaud you, and that's okay. You don't need universal approval. You need internal alignment. Because here's what happens when you shrink to make others comfortable. You betray the very self you worked so hard to become. Stoicism teaches us, do not compare, do not compete. Do not crave validation. Instead, focus on your effort, your virtues, your process, because that's what's in your control. And that's where real fulfillment comes from. The truth is, people who envy you don't need punishment. They need distance, not out of anger, but out of clarity. And here's the most powerful thing you can do in response to envy. Keep growing, silently, boldly, unapologetically. Let your discipline speak. Let your calmness speak. Let your peace speak. And surround yourself with people who don't flinch when you win. People who clap for you when you rise. Because success is not just about what you achieve, it's also about who you become in the presence of those who don't understand it. So if someone can't handle your light, don't argue. Don't explain. Just protect it. Your growth is not a threat. It's a reflection of what's possible when you take ownership of your life. Let that be your reminder today. Don't dull your shine to soothe someone else's insecurity. Sharpen your edge. Guard your energy. And keep rising, quietly, consistently, and courageously. That is Stoic. That is rare. That is powerful. Part 5. The hot-tempered. There's a kind of energy that walks into a room and immediately shifts the atmosphere, not with presence, not with confidence, but with volatility. You know the feeling. Someone raises their voice over something small. They slam a door, snap at a stranger, explode at a minor inconvenience, and everyone around them instantly stiffens. Not because they're powerful, but because they're unpredictable. This is the hot-tempered. And if you've ever spent time around someone like this, you know it's not just uncomfortable, it's exhausting. You start to tiptoe. You second-guess your words. You hold back your thoughts to avoid setting them off. And little by little, your inner peace becomes collateral damage in someone else's emotional storm. But here's what we often forget. Anger is not strength. It's a loss of control, masquerading as dominance. The Stoics saw this clearly. In fact, Seneca once called anger a brief madness. Because when anger takes over, reason shuts down. Perspective shrinks. And what's left is raw reaction, wild, unstable, often destructive. You don't have to be a philosopher to recognize this. Think about it. When was the last time someone's outburst actually solved something? Did the yelling bring clarity? Did the slammed door build connection? Or did it just add more chaos to the moment? Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor of Rome, wrote something profound. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. And he who angers you controls you. Let that sink in. When someone's rage pulls you into their fire, they own you in that moment. Your calm, gone. Your clarity, hijacked. Your mood, contaminated. So what do? We don't fight fire with fire. We don't try to match their energy. And we don't try to fix or calm them if it costs our own mental stability. The Stoic response? We detach. Calmly, firmly, intentionally. Now, this doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming immovable, like a mountain in the middle of a storm. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're having a conversation, and someone suddenly erupts, raises their voice, throws out insults, tries to provoke you. Your instinct might be to react, to defend, to raise your voice in return. But what if you didn't? What if you simply paused? What if you let the storm pass without letting it enter you? Because here's the truth. Most angry people aren't looking for resolution. They're looking for a target. And if you don't give them one, you remove their power. One of the most powerful things you can do in the presence of rage is refuse to mirror it. Let them burn out their fuel. You stay composed. You respond, not react. And if the energy becomes toxic, you enforce distance, with calm, not conflict. You say, I won't continue this conversation until it's respectful. Or, we'll talk when things are calmer. And then, you leave. Not as a punishment, but as protection for yourself. Because your peace is not a gift you hand over when someone else loses theirs. Now here's something to reflect on. Why do hot-tempered people gain so much control in social spaces? It's not because they're respected. It's because we allow their emotional instability to dictate the environment. We lower our voices so they don't raise theirs. We shift our behavior to keep the peace. But what about our peace? What about our boundaries? The Stoics believe that true power isn't loud. It's grounded. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply exists, rooted in reason, discipline, and self-control. So if someone in your life consistently explodes, consistently disrupts, consistently makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells, it's time to get honest. Do they deserve that much access to your life? To your emotions? Because every moment you spend absorbing their rage is a moment lost from building your own peace. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What if it's someone I can't avoid? A boss, a family member, a partner. In those cases, the solution isn't always physical distance, but emotional boundaries. You create mental space. You disengage when needed. You prepare your mind before entering conversations. Like Marcus Aurelius said, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "Today, I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Not to become bitter, but to become ready, prepared, grounded, unshakable. Because here's the ultimate truth. No one can destabilize your mind without your permission. So protect your calm like it's sacred, because it is. You don't owe anyone your emotional availability if they can't handle it with care. And the next time a hot-tempered person tries to pull you into their fire, let your silence be your shield. Let your peace be your protest. Let your distance be your decision, not theirs. That is how you win without fighting. That is how you lead without shouting. That is Stoic. Part 6. The drama magnet. You know that person who always seems to have a crisis? Their life is always on fire. Every day brings a new emergency, a new betrayal, a new meltdown, and somehow, it always becomes your problem too. They come to you with urgency, with tears, with tension, with chaos, and you try to be supportive. You listen. You offer advice. You care. But soon you notice something strange. The chaos never ends. Even when one issue is resolved, another one appears right behind it. And before long, you realize they're not looking for peace. They're looking for attention. This is the drama magnet. At first glance, they seem overwhelmed. But dig deeper, and you'll see. They're addicted to the energy of crisis. They thrive on emotional highs and lows. They stir conflict, escalate tension, exaggerate small things into big explosions. Not because they want a solution, but because chaos makes them feel significant. They don't just have problems, they perform them. And if you're not careful, they'll recruit you as part of their personal audience, or worse, as their emotional janitor. But here's the truth no one likes to say. Some people don't want healing. They want a stage. And the more you try to fix things for them, the more entangled you become in a cycle that was never yours to begin with. So what does Stoicism say about this? The Stoics were clear. Don't react, respond. There's a difference. Reacting is impulsive. It's emotional. It's getting swept up in someone else's wave. Responding is measured. It's deliberate. It's standing on solid ground, even when the winds of drama howl around you. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Drama magnets live in that suffering. They build stories in their heads, magnify every discomfort, and pull others in to validate their narrative. If you don't have clear psychological boundaries, you'll find yourself living inside someone else's imagination, drained, frustrated, and off your own path. So let's talk about how to break free. 1. Stop trying to fix them. This is the hardest part, especially if you're empathetic. But listen closely. You are not their emotional life raft. Helping someone who doesn't want peace is like trying to calm a storm that feeds on its own wind. No amount of advice, comfort, or reasoning will soothe someone who finds identity in chaos. Let that sink in. If their identity is built on crisis, resolution feels like a threat. So instead of giving energy to their emotional fire, let it burn out without your oxygen. Which brings us to the next move. 2. Maintain silent presence. Not every situation requires a lecture. Sometimes the most powerful response is stillness. When a drama magnet spins into panic, stay calm. When they try to bait you into emotional reactions, don't take the hook. Be present, but grounded. compassionate but quiet, supportive but immovable. Your steadiness will speak louder than your words ever could. And here's the powerful truth. Drama cannot survive in silence. Without reaction, the performance fades. 3. Set firm psychological boundaries. This is where Stoicism becomes your armor. You have the right to protect your mental space. That means you can say, "I'm here if you need a calm conversation, but I won't participate in shouting or chaos." It means you can step away from texts, calls, or messages that drain your clarity. It means you don't have to answer immediately, or at all. And most importantly, it means you stop letting their storm define your weather. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When you stop letting drama magnets dictate your emotional state, you regain ownership of your peace. You realize their urgency is not your emergency. Their chaos is not your responsibility. You are allowed to prioritize calm. You are allowed to choose stillness. You are allowed to walk away. This doesn't make you heartless. It makes you wise. Now here's the final test. Drama magnets will often make you feel guilty for disengaging. They'll accuse you of being cold, of not caring, of changing. Let them. Because the moment you stop fueling their performance, they lose control. And control, not connection, was what they were after all along. So today, I want to offer you this simple Stoic truth. Peace is not selfish, it's sacred. And you do not owe anyone the pieces of your mind just to keep them emotionally entertained. Let others chase noise. Let them chase validation. You? Chase alignment. Hold your center. Protect your energy. And let your stillness be the loudest message in a world addicted to noise. That is how the Stoic walks through chaos. Not as a savior, not as a judge, but as a steady presence. Unmoved, unshaken, free. Part 7. The naysayer. There's a kind of voice that sounds calm, reasonable, even helpful. But if you're not careful, it can quietly derail your dreams. It doesn't yell. It doesn't insult. It doesn't attack directly. It simply plants a seed of doubt. You sure that's realistic? That sounds risky. Most people don't succeed doing that. And the worst part, they say it like they care, like they're doing you a favor. This is the naysayer. And they're not always your enemy. Sometimes they're your friend. Your sibling, your parent, your mentor. Even your own inner voice. But here's what makes the naysayer so dangerous. They wrap fear in the disguise of logic. They don't come with emotion. They come with spreadsheets. They quote statistics. They raise valid concerns. They remind you to be realistic. And slowly, if you're not vigilant, they chip away at your vision, one cautious question at a time. Now don't get me wrong. Wisdom isn't about ignoring feedback, but Stoic wisdom teaches us something deeper. It's not things that disturb us, Epictetus said, but our interpretation of those things. In other words, it's not the naysayer's words that derail us. It's the weight we give them. And when someone speaks with authority or familiarity, we often accept their doubt as truth, without ever questioning their lens. But ask yourself this: is their caution based on insight or fear? Are they trying to help you grow or keep you small? Are they projecting their limits or reflecting your reality? Because intention matters, but impact matters more. Someone can mean well and still hold you back. They can love you and still underestimate you. They can speak with concern and still poison your conviction. That's why the Stoic path calls us to filter external noise through internal clarity. Let me explain. Every vision you have, every bold goal, every dream, every step toward a life that feels more you, it lives in a fragile stage when it's just getting started. And that's when the naysayer strikes. Not out of cruelty, but often out of habit. Their world is built on comfort, on avoiding risk, on managing expectations. So when you show up with fire, with passion, with an idea that challenges the status quo, it rattles them. And instead of saying, "How can I support you?" they say, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Now, the Stoic doesn't get angry at this. The Stoic doesn't waste time trying to convince everyone. Instead, they discern. They separate noise from wisdom, emotion from reason, and they ask, does this serve my path or sabotage it? Let me give you a practical example. Imagine someone tells you your dream is too big, your idea is unrealistic, your timeline is naive. The reactive response is to defend, to argue, to shrink. But the Stoic response, it's to pause and ask, what part of this is true? What part is projection? And what do I believe deep down, regardless of either? That's how you build conviction, not through blind faith, but through inner alignment. You don't need to be reckless. You don't need to ignore feedback, but you do need to become the final filter of what enters your belief system, because here's the truth. No one else is living your life. No one else has your perspective, your calling, your gut feeling about where you're meant to go. And if you let other people's comfort zones define your limits, you'll spend your life waiting for permission that never comes. So what's the Stoic action? 1. Discern. Intention versus impact. Ask yourself, is this person trying to protect me or control me? Is their advice grounded in truth or in fear? Sometimes the answer is nuanced, but even then, the final decision rests with you. 2. Filter criticism. Through logic, not emotion. Don't take doubt personally. Test it like a scientist would test data. Is it based on experience? Is it universally true, or just their opinion? Detach from the emotional tone and focus on the facts. Clarity always lives on the other side of calm analysis. 3. Build inner conviction. Daily. Conviction isn't something you find. It's something you forge through daily decisions that align with your values. Every time you move forward in the face of doubt, you strengthen your belief in yourself. And eventually, that belief becomes unshakable. Not because everyone agrees with you, but because you've learned to stand alone with strength. Remember this. Even the greatest minds were doubted. People said Marcus Aurelius was too philosophical to lead. They said Seneca was too idealistic. They said Epictetus, a former slave, could never be a philosopher. They were all told to be realistic. But realism is often just a socially accepted form of fear. And the Stoic chooses reason over fear, action over approval. So when the naysayer shows up in your life or in your own mind, don't get defensive. Get clear, get still, and get moving. Because the only thing more dangerous than criticism is letting it stop you from becoming who you were meant to be. That's Stoic. That's courageous. That's freedom. Part 8. The Toxic Positivist. Have you ever shared something difficult with someone, something heavy, something real, and they responded with, "Just stay positive. Everything happens for a reason. Good vibes only." And suddenly you feel worse, not better. You weren't looking for a solution. You weren't asking for pity. You just wanted to be heard, to be seen in your struggle. But instead of connection, you got dismissal, wrapped in a smile. This is the toxic positivist. Now let's be clear. Positivity itself isn't the enemy. Hope matters. Mindset matters. Resilience matters. But when positivity becomes a shield against reality, it turns toxic. Because sometimes things are hard. Sometimes life hurts. And no amount of glittery slogans will make grief, betrayal, or fear disappear. In fact, pretending everything is fine when it's not only delays healing. Toxic positivity doesn't just ignore your pain, it shames it. It says, if you were stronger, you'd be smiling right now. If you were more spiritual, you wouldn't feel this. If you were grateful, you wouldn't be sad. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The Stoics never said, just be happy. They never said, ignore your feelings. They said, train through pain. Face it. Understand it. Learn from it. As Epictetus put it, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because growth requires discomfort. Truth requires honesty, and healing requires feeling. Toxic positivity tells you to bypass that process. To jump straight to the sunshine without walking through the storm. But storms are where strength is forged. Here's what most people don't realize. Emotion is not weakness. It's data. It's feedback. It's your inner world speaking to you. And when someone rushes you to look on the bright side, they're not helping you grow. They're helping themselves avoid discomfort. Because real emotional presence is rare. It requires stillness. It requires listening without fixing. It requires sitting with someone in their darkness, not dragging them out of it before they're ready. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of forced optimism, it doesn't feel like encouragement. It feels like erasure. So how do we deal with the toxic positivist? With Stoic clarity, not bitterness. Here's how. 1. Replace blind optimism with clear vision. The Stoic doesn't sugarcoat. They don't pretend. They prepare. When something is painful, we don't deny it. We define it. What is the challenge? What is the lesson? What's in your control and what isn't? This is what Marcus Aurelius practiced daily. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength isn't pretending you're fine. Strength is facing life as it is, then responding with courage. 2. Embrace honest emotions. Feel it, name it, then direct it. Sadness doesn't make you broken. Anger doesn't make you weak. Fear doesn't mean you're failing. These are human emotions. The Stoic simply doesn't let them lead the way. We acknowledge them, we sit with them, and then we choose how to act. 3. Reject emotional suppression. You don't owe anyone a smile that isn't real. You don't have to fake peace to make others comfortable. And you don't need to package your pain in polite language for it to be valid. Your struggle is not less spiritual because it's messy. Your sadness is not less meaningful because it doesn't fit someone else's timeline. Real strength isn't found in pretending things are okay. It's found in holding yourself together while they're not, and still showing up. So when the toxic positivist enters the room, smiling, quoting cliches, handing you shortcuts to avoid your feelings, what do? You stay grounded. You don't take the bait. You respond with truth. You say, I appreciate the intention. But I don't need a silver lining. I need space to feel what's real. And if they can't hold that space, that's okay. You hold it for yourself. Because the Stoic knows, peace doesn't come from denial. It comes from discipline. The discipline to sit with hard things, to face the ache without rushing, to walk through the valley with dignity and clarity and self-respect. That is real power. That is real presence. That is Stoic. So today, if you're feeling something real, honor it. If you're grieving, grieve fully. If you're angry, breathe through it. If you're scared, own it. And then step forward, clear, honest, and unafraid to feel everything life brings. That's how we grow. Not by skipping pain, but by walking straight through it, one clear breath at a time. Part 9. The professional victim. We've all known someone like this. Someone who's always hurting, always overwhelmed, always stuck in a story where life is happening to them and never through them. At first, you feel for them. You listen. You support. You show up. But over time, you begin to notice a pattern. They don't want to heal. They want to be seen as someone who's been hurt, not someone who's ready to rise. This is the professional victim. Now listen, this isn't about judging pain. We all carry wounds. We all have seasons of struggle. But there's a big difference between someone who's in pain and someone who has made pain their identity. The professional victim doesn't seek growth. They seek sympathy. They want your attention, your energy, your emotional labor, but not your truth. Try to encourage them, they shut down, offer a different perspective. They say you don't understand. Hold them accountable. Suddenly you're the bad guy. And slowly, you find yourself in a one-sided relationship. One where you're expected to carry the weight of their unprocessed emotions. It starts with compassion, but ends in emotional codependence. So how do we recognize when empathy has become enabling? And more importantly, how do we protect our peace without abandoning compassion? Let's look to the Stoics. Epictetus, once a slave turned philosopher, said, "You are not defined by what broke you, but by how you rebuild." In Stoicism, suffering is never denied. But it is never idolized either. Pain is part of the path. But clinging to pain as a permanent identity, that's a trap. Because when you live in your wounds, you forfeit your power. You trade your potential for pity. You stop growing. Because being the one who was wronged becomes more familiar than being the one who rises anyway. And if you're around someone like this long enough, their mindset begins to infect your own. You start questioning your instincts. You start second-guessing your boundaries. You even feel guilty for not suffering more, just to match their emotional temperature. This is why Stoicism emphasizes emotional sovereignty. You can care without collapsing. You can listen without absorbing. You can stand in compassion without sitting in someone else's storm. Here's how. 1. Empathize without enabling. It's okay to say, "I hear you. What happened to you matters." But it's also okay to say, "And now, what are you going to do about it?" Because real empathy isn't about keeping someone in the same story. It's about believing they're capable of writing a new one. If someone keeps rehearsing the same pain year after year with no movement, no effort, no curiosity about growth, that's not healing. That's rehearsed helplessness. You don't have to feed it to prove you care. 2. Ask power-restoring questions. Instead of jumping in to fix or console, ask questions that spark agency. What's one small thing you could take responsibility for today? What would healing look like for you, if you chose it? What do you want more? Comfort or change? These questions don't attack. They invite. They shift the focus from what happened to what's possible. And that is where transformation begins. 3. Protect your emotional space. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world, especially those who drain it to sustain their narrative. If someone consistently leaves you emotionally exhausted, anxious, or guilty, pay attention. The Stoics were clear. Your mind is a fortress. Your time is finite. Your peace is sacred. Compassion does not require proximity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for them and for you, is to lovingly detach. Step back, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. Stop overfunctioning. Stop absorbing their storm. Stop joining them in the trench they refuse to leave. Because you're not their rescuer. You're not their savior. You're not responsible for healing someone who refuses to take the first step. Now, maybe someone watching this is thinking, but what if I'm the one stuck in that mindset? Then hear this with love. You are allowed to feel everything: rage, grief, regret, loss. But you are not required to stay there forever. Your pain is real, but so is your power. And at some point, you have to stop waiting to be rescued and choose to rebuild. Because the truth is, you are not your past. You are not your trauma. You are not what broke you. You are how you rise from it. The Stoic doesn't deny that life can be brutal. They simply refuse to let it define who they become. So whether you're supporting a professional victim or recovering from being one, remember this: compassion has boundaries. Healing requires effort, and peace is a practice, not a prize handed to the most wounded. Hold space for others, yes, but hold space for yourself too. That's Stoic, that's mature, that's freedom. Part 10. The Manipulator. Sometimes control doesn't come with raised voices or direct orders. It comes wrapped in sweetness, wrapped in flattery, wrapped in guilt. It comes from the person who always seems one step ahead, not because they're wiser, but because they've learned how to bend others without breaking them. This is the manipulator. They don't dominate with force, they dominate with subtlety. They know exactly how to make you feel seen until you disagree with them. They know just the right compliment to give before slipping in a request. And when you try to set a boundary, suddenly you're too much, too distant, too selfish, too cold. And now you're second-guessing yourself. Not because you're wrong, but because you've been strategically confused. That's how manipulators work. They make you question your own thoughts, your own memory, your own instincts. One day you're confident, the next day you're walking on eggshells wondering how you became the problem. This is not a coincidence. This is craft. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's psychological warfare in small doses. And here's the hard truth. They rarely look like villains. In fact, many manipulators are charming, smart, empathetic. They know how to speak your language because they studied your vulnerabilities. Now, before you spiral into self-blame or paranoia, let's bring it back to center. The Stoics had a word for what protects you from this kind of influence: clarity. Clarity is power. As Epictetus taught, you are not disturbed by events, but by your interpretation of them. And when someone manipulates your interpretation, they manipulate your freedom. That's why the Stoic path calls us to protect mental sovereignty above all else. Because once someone controls your thoughts, they don't need to control your actions. You'll do it for them. So let's talk about how to recognize and neutralize manipulation without becoming cold, bitter, or guarded. Here's the Stoic approach. 1. Reclaim inner authority. The Stoic doesn't outsource their self-worth. They don't need someone else to validate their decisions, values, or voice. So ask yourself, whose voice is louder in your mind, yours or theirs? Do you feel the need to explain your boundaries? Or do you honor them without apology? Do you walk away from conversations feeling empowered or emotionally foggy? When your inner compass starts spinning every time you're near someone, pay attention. That's not intuition failing. That's manipulation working. Bring the compass back to center. You get to choose what you believe, what you accept, what you allow. That's where your power lives, not in control over others, but in control over yourself. 2. Watch behavior over words. Manipulators are excellent storytellers. They say all the right things. They swear they want the best for you. But Stoicism reminds us, don't listen to what people say. Observe what they do. Do their actions align with their words? Do they respect your boundaries or push just hard enough to make you fold? If someone constantly needs you to bend, adjust, shrink, or feel guilty in order for peace to exist, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And the only way out of that performance is to stop playing your role. 3. Assert boundaries without leakage. The Stoic doesn't explode. They don't threaten. They don't beg for understanding. They set boundaries like setting a table, calmly, clearly, confidently. You don't need to yell. You don't need to justify. You simply say, "This doesn't feel respectful to me. I'm not available for that kind of dynamic anymore. I don't need to explain. My boundary is enough." And here's the key. No leakage. No walking it back later. No softening the edges to keep them comfortable. No guilt-tripping yourself for choosing peace, because manipulators don't respect hints. They respect consistency. Every time you reinforce your boundary without emotion, you send one clear message. This mind belongs to me. Now, let me say this directly. Not every manipulator is malicious. Some are wounded. Some are operating from patterns they learned for survival. But good intentions don't excuse harmful patterns. And your job is not to diagnose or fix them. Your job is to stay in command of your own mind. Because true Stoicism isn't about being unfeeling. It's about being unshaken. And no one, no matter how clever or charming, should have the power to distort your truth. So the next time someone tries to make you question your voice, your value, your direction, pause. Get still, get clear, and remember, you don't owe anyone access to your mind just because they want to influence it. You are the guardian of your thoughts. You are the gatekeeper of your energy. And your boundaries are not walls. They are doors that only wisdom can unlock. That is Stoic. That is strength. That is mental freedom. Part 11. The overindulgent. There's a message we hear a lot these days. Just treat yourself. You only live once. Stop being so hard on yourself. Do what feels good. And on the surface, it sounds empowering. Like a celebration of freedom, of self-love, of finally choosing you. But if we look deeper, beneath the hashtags and soft slogans, there's something else happening. Sometimes what's being sold as freedom is really just an excuse to escape responsibility. This is the overindulgent mindset, and the people who promote it. They mock structure. They ridicule discipline. They glorify comfort. They make laziness sound like liberation. And mediocrity sound like self-acceptance. But here's the truth. Not everything that feels good is good for you. Because true self-respect isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about becoming who you were meant to be, even when it's hard. The overindulgent say things like, "Why wake up early? Life is short. Why push yourself? You're enough as you are." Why delay gratification? You could be gone tomorrow. But what they don't tell you is this: living only for pleasure slowly makes you a prisoner of it. And the more you chase ease, the less capacity you have for growth, for focus, for strength. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who lived as a slave before becoming a teacher, said it simply: "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is not the absence of structure. It's the presence of inner authority. It's being able to say, "I will not be ruled by cravings. I will not surrender my potential to my impulses. I will not confuse indulgence with love." Because real self-love has boundaries. Real self-love trains you for the future. Real self-love says, "I believe in who I can become, so I'll practice the discipline to meet that person." Now, this isn't about becoming robotic. It's not about denying joy, or never resting, or rejecting spontaneity. Stoicism isn't about punishing yourself. It's about leading yourself. And leadership always requires standards. So let me ask you, are your habits carrying you toward your highest self, or keeping you comfortably stuck? Are the people around you encouraging your growth, or enabling your drift? Because one of the clearest signs of overindulgence is when people normalize mediocrity. They'll say, "Why take it so seriously? Don't be obsessed. Relax. It's not that deep." But behind their laughter is fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being reminded that they could be more, but choose not to be. So when they see your focus, they mock it. When they see your effort, they minimize it. When they see your progress, they label it too much. Not because it is, but because it reminds them of their own excuses. The Stoic path is clear. Let discipline be your compass. Not in a harsh way, but in a self-honoring way. Discipline doesn't trap you. It frees you from being pulled in 1,000 directions. It builds resilience. It protects your time. It turns wants into worth. When you wake up early to write, when you say no to distractions, when you stretch instead of scrolling, that's not self-denial. That's self-respect. The overindulgent want you to believe that discipline is a prison. But in reality, discipline is the gate to freedom. Because without structure, life drifts. Without challenge, potential sleeps. Without aim, you end up nowhere, fast. Now here's where Stoicism becomes your armor. You learn to guard your environment, not just your physical space, but your mental landscape. The conversations you engage in, the people you follow, the content you consume. Because your mind is always being trained. The only question is, by what? So if you're surrounded by voices that encourage comfort at all costs, you'll start to shrink, slowly, without even noticing. But if you place yourself in rooms, physical or digital, where people value effort, virtue, growth, you'll rise. Even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. Because that's the Stoic way. We don't act based on feelings. We act based on values. And here's the most powerful shift. Start seeing structure not as restriction, but as commitment to who you want to become. The schedule you follow, the habits you build, the boundaries you enforce. They're not fences. They're foundations. Because the life you dream of, it won't come from doing whatever you feel like, whenever you feel like it. It will come from doing what's needed, even when it's not easy. That's not oppression. That's freedom. So today, ask yourself, where have I been calling comfort self-care when it's really avoidance? Where have I let discipline slip in the name of balance? And what would my life look like If I chose structure as an act of love, not punishment? Because the Stoic doesn't chase comfort. They build character, and in a world that's always tempting you to drift, that's how you rise. So let's bring it all together. Over these last chapters, we've uncovered 11 types of people who don't always destroy you with obvious harm. They don't scream. They don't sabotage out loud. They don't punch holes in your walls or curse your name. No, they erode you, quietly, subtly. Through constant doubt, through passive guilt, through endless distraction, through the normalization of weakness, chaos, and comfort. They don't always attack your life. They just slow you down enough that you start second-guessing the very power that was trying to rise within you. And the hardest part, many of these people aren't strangers. They're close. They're familiar. They wear the face of family, old friendships, even love. So we tolerate. We justify. We over-explain. We twist ourselves into emotional shapes, trying not to offend them, while quietly betraying ourselves. But here's the truth that Stoicism helps us see with brutal clarity. Not everyone who has access to your life deserves access to your mind. And cutting that access, that's not cruelty. That's clarity. It's not rage, it's wisdom. It's not revenge, it's self-respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. That's not denial. That's mastery. It's saying, I don't need to fight you to be free from you. I don't need to expose you to heal from you. I just need to stop giving you what you never earned, my peace. Because every moment you spend justifying your boundaries, every hour spent explaining why you need space, every ounce of guilt you carry for choosing yourself, that's energy you could have used to build your future, to train your mind, to lead your life. Clarity isn't just kindness to you, it's kindness to them too. Because when you stop enabling people's dysfunction, you stop lying to them about what's acceptable. And that is real compassion. You don't have to yell. You don't have to cut people off with coldness. But you do have to become unavailable to energy that corrupts your focus. Because this life, it's short. And your greatness has already waited long enough. So what does the Stoic path ask of you now? Not to become a stone. Not to live alone, but to walk with discernment. To ask, does this person sharpen me or soften me into apathy? Yes, do they support my values or subtly undermine them? Am I growing here or just not rocking the boat? These are not cruel questions. These are survival questions for the soul. Because here's the secret. You don't rise by being accepted. You rise by becoming unshakable. You rise by drawing the line no one else can draw for you. You rise by choosing stillness when chaos knocks. You rise by letting go, not with hate, but with honor. So if someone is draining your energy, if they twist your boundaries into betrayal, if they demand your peace as the price of staying close, don't shrink, don't beg, don't argue. Just choose yourself quietly, clearly, powerfully. That is the Stoic way. That is inner sovereignty. That is the beginning of your next level. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't just watch and move on. Reflect on it. Live it. Share it. Drop a comment below. What kind of energy are you releasing from your life? What boundaries do you now feel ready to enforce? And if you're serious about mastering your emotions, reclaiming your focus, and building a life of unshakable clarity, subscribe to the channel This isn't just content. This is your training ground. And remember, you don't need to become louder. You just need to become clearer. Now go become what the world could not bend.